This episode of the Cult Popture podcast was brought to you by our Patreon. If you want to tell us which films we should watch, listen to up to 2 extra exclusive podcasts a month, or give us something to discuss in our new post-credit scenes at the end of each episode, then please consider joining the cult and donating at www.patreon.com/cultpopture. I'm just going to turn my heater off.
Is this part of the podcast?
Do you want to make it part of the podcast?
Nah.
I've got my podcast voice on.
Yeah, that is
Don't
true.
I? You knew that, didn't you?
I did. Can you give us a sample of your non-podcasting voice? Because some people might have never heard of it.
Okay, if I didn't intend that to be recorded, it'd sound like this. Alright, I just got to turn my heater off. I talk like this when I'm not podcasting, and I talk like this when I am podcasting, Richard.
I'm just going to turn off my heater. I talk the same, I think, on both. Maybe
Right.
Maybe that's why you're everyone's favourite.
Maybe, am I everyone? Everyone's favourite from what sample size? Like 4 people have told us who their favourite is. So it's
Yeah.
only the people who like the show enough to even tell us who their favourite is.
I can tell. But not when I put on my podcasting voice.
Well, let us know in the comments of this podcast. Do you like Richard more when he does a fun podcast voice?
Am I more tolerable if I do a podcasting voice?
Welcome everybody to Film Franchise Fortnights on the Cult Popture podcast. I am AJ, joined by Richard as usual, and we come to you today on this beautiful quarantined New Zealand afternoon to talk about a film franchise, which we do every fortnight.
Mm-hmm. That's because this is the Cult Popture podcast you're listening to.
All right, okay. We need our little soundboard of like fun sound effects.
Yeah. What would our sound effects be?
The only one I can think of is whoosh, my life, which was probably like I want to know.
That's the only time I've felt the absence of a soundboard.
yeah. This is in reference to an episode we recorded like 2 years ago. But I want to know another question I'm putting to people up the top of the episode. How funny do people find Whoopish My Wife? Because like I remember at the time thinking if we were a bigger podcast, I'd get a shirt printed of that joke.
Yeah.
Like it feels like that's like one of those things you put on a shirt because of how good of a joke it was. But I don't think I've ever heard one of the fans talk about it. It's just
instead we've got very sexy.
Very cool and very sexy. Yes. Well, one thing that is very cool and very sexy, potentially, Richard,
is this group of young boys.
Yeah, right. The franchise that we're covering this fortnight, which is the Mighty Ducks Trilogy, a franchise about Pee-wee hockey teams. The group of young boys and girls. Does that make calling them very sexy better or worse? Once again, let us know in the comments. We're talking today about the Mighty Ducks trilogy, which consists of the Mighty Ducks in 1992, sometimes called Champions in other countries, sometimes called the Mighty Ducks Are the Champions in other countries. But not really. That was a weird piece of trivia I read and was like, I've never ever heard them.
Yeah, I wondered, do you know what countries?
Nah, I didn't look it up. It wasn't New Zealand.
Because some people are going to be listening to this and be like, what the hell is the Mighty Ducks? And they go, oh, champions. The Mighty Ducks are champions, you mean?
Yeah. So the Mighty Ducks came out in 1992. That was followed in 1994 by D2, The Mighty Ducks, which was followed in 1996 by D3, The Mighty Ducks. And look, it's our second trilogy in a row that was released in nice, neat 2-year increments.
Yay!
Look at that.
You
Up top
remembered.
useless statistics. There will be some more useless statistics later on. The Mighty
apparently,
Ducks...
this movie was released as Champions in Australia.
What?
So it's weird that we didn't get it as that.
Maybe we did, but we got D2 The Mighty Ducks, and so The Mighty Ducks as a brand name.
Yeah, well, I mean, because the first
established.
one came out, before we were born?
Yeah, 92.
Yeah, so I don't remember the release of it, because I was yet to be born.
I just remember the logo. I'd never seen these movies before with this podcast, and all I knew about The Mighty Ducks was that logo. So, the first film in 1992 was directed by Stephen Herrick, who has directed 2 other films we've covered on Film Franchise Fortnights.
Hey!
Do you want to take an impossibly wild guess at what those other 2 films are?
Are they just sequels?
One is an original, and one is a remake.
Are they Disney movies?
One is a Disney movie.
101 Dalmatians?
Yeah, man, that's one of them.
That's the remake, and then the original Critters.
It was. Did you look that up?
I did.
Because there's nothing you could say that would make me believe you just guessed that. It was too impossible.
Or
of a
that I
task.
remembered that from the Critters episode.
Yeah. So what is the Mighty Ducks about?
So the Mighty Ducks is about Gordon Bombay, a local attorney who is
Emilio Estevez,
down on his luck because he gets pulled over for drunk driving.
The most adult thing that happens.
Yeah. At the start of the film, our hero is inebriated and thinks, "Oh, I'll go for a drive." But he's caught.
Disney movie. Crazy.
Yeah. And he's sentenced to community service, and so he ends up coaching hockey. And so he meets this team of fucking losers who cannot win a game, and they lose significantly in every game. It's not just that they're bad; they're very bad. But he says, "You know what? I'm going to coach these guys," because he used to play for a team in the same league called the Hawks, and so then he coaches these guys who end up being called the Ducks, which is because they get funding from Bombay's boss, Mr. Ducksworth, so they can get good gear and really stand a chance, because if there's one thing that we know, it's that you don't have a fair shot unless you have money.
And also, just a side note, Ducksworth is actually a villain by the end of the film and is never redeemed, and yet they keep the same namesake, which reminds me of the fact that my younger sister, Madison, was named after a motivational speaker that my parents liked, named someone Madison, who then ended up stealing money from his company or something. But she's still called that, and he still is being, his name is still shamed.
Yeah. I was almost called Hamish, but there was a guy my parents knew called Hamish who was a dick, and they didn't want him thinking that I was named after him.
Very
and growing
valid.
up, when I hated the name Richard, and I always wished I was named Hamish. But
you suit a Hamish.
Thank you.
The Cold Popture podcast with Hamish and AJ. Doesn't sound bad.
Well, it's too close to Hamish and Andy.
AJ and Hamish?
No, you're not going first.
I think I go first usually now, don't I?
Richard and AJ?
What sounds better?
The Cold Popture podcast with Richard.
That's good.
So
Continue, sorry.
Anyway, yeah. So it ends up that they get coached. It's your typical kind of sports movie plot. It's all the beats, and then they end up facing off against the Hawks, Bombay's old team, still coached by the same person, and they end up winning on a penalty shot, which is how Bombay was disgraced when he was a kid by fucking that up.
By his old coach, who is his kind of villainy comes from his unwillingness to accept anything other than victory from his Pee-wee team. Yep, so D2, The Mighty Ducks, was directed by Sam Wiseman, who it seems like a familiar name, but he hasn't directed anything we've watched before. And what is D2, The Mighty Ducks about?
Okay, so now it gets into the kind of you're stretching the rubber band of reality a little bit. So Bombay ends up trying. So he ends up playing hockey himself, right?
Yeah.
And then
I don't know how much that plays into the story, though.
Yeah, but then so he essentially he goes off to make his own way in the world because he's made a name for himself. Coaching the Mighty Ducks and taking them from zero to hero, and then he gets his knee injured, and so he gets a chance to coach the the national team kind of thing, representing them in like the Pee Wee international games. And so he's like, oh, sweet, I'll just grab the ducks. Which feels like he shouldn't be allowed to do. But
well, I guess this is going to show, which if you've been listening for a while, you'll know I'm not a very sporty person. I really don't. I would say it's not just that I don't care about sport, like I actively don't like sport. And I was like, do people give a shit about a Pee-wee hockey team, like to the standard
in the States, like
team?
these things, maybe not Pee-wee, but I know like college football is like a huge thing
for sure.
Yeah,
but like these are 12-year-old kids who are now kind of treated as world famous in a way. Yeah, very strange.
Yeah, but it's like. But yeah, the whole, like, so he just gets the Ducks to be Team USA. He adds in, like, 5 other players. And then so it's like, all of this from, where are they from? Like, Minnesota or something?
Yep, Minnesota.
And then it's like, they're representing the entire country. It's like if, Steve Hansen, whoever the new coach of the All Blacks was like, okay, the team is just going to be the Crusaders and we'll get, like, 2 other people.
And one of Keenan from Keenan and Cal just happens upon them
as an All Black
and joins like a nationally regarded team.
But so the Ducks, it's the classic sequel thing of now they think they're hot shot, so they go into the national leagues and they get beaten in their first game against Iceland, which is the green one,
and dastardly Icelandians.
Yeah, and then they end up, it's very humbling for them, and they have to fight their way back up to the top, and they end up facing Iceland in the final, which they end in a tie, and then it's like a penalty shootout, which Team USA wins.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And Richard, what is D3 The Mighty Ducks, directed by Robert Lieberman? Again, a familiar name that didn't direct anything we've ever watched. What is D3 about?
Okay, so D3 is now forget Bombay, forget Emilio, forget everything you knew about Emilio Estevez.
He's Charlie Sheen's brother. That was all I knew about him.
Forget it.
Okay, I've forgotten it.
So it's kind of like a passing the torch sequel where, you're supposed to care about his young protege, Charlie, who he sort of, it took under his wing, especially in the first film. And then now they're all the Ducks, they get scholarships to this high school, which it's made it look like it's a college or like, university. And like, they're all quite old at this point. And then at one point, Charlie says that he's 14. And I was like, is that a joke? I was like, because I couldn't work out when this was supposed to take place. I was like, this could have been, a good 5-6 years later kind of thing. Because they do age up significantly between the second and third films, I thought, anyway. And then, but no, they're just entering high school. And there's like the kind of, there's like the varsity team, as it was called. Yeah,
the Warriors.
The Warriors there that, they don't like the Ducks, essentially.
Yeah, the Ducks are freshmen and the Warriors are not freshmen.
Yeah.
Whatever. I don't know. What's year 13 in American high school?
Seniors.
Seniors. Yeah, they're seniors. There you go.
Yeah, and so
played by 30-year-olds. Literally played by 30-year-olds.
Oh no, nice. And then what happens? Emilio Estevez comes back briefly. He's in this movie like not a lot,
contractually enough to appear on the DVD cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of about their struggles with their new coach, who's like this misunderstood ex-NHL guy. It's really not too different from the other two, where it's just them going up against a villainous hockey team, and in the end they beat them
in an unexpected way.
Yeah. I mean, that's it, right? So what did you think of these films, either individually, as a whole? How would you rank them, that sort of thing?
Okay, so like you, I had never seen these films growing up. I have distinct memories of flipping through the channels and seeing parts of it, like
these are in the school holidays when they play a movie every day at 1 p.m.
Yeah.
Like you turn on and it's the Mighty Ducks, and you're like, oh, okay. And then the next day it's D2, the Mighty Ducks, and you're like, fuck. I know it's a trilogy, so I can bet what Thursday's film's going to be.
And then Thursday won't be.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I saw Back to the Future, they played it on TV, and then like a month later, they played Back to the Future 3.
Is it possible you just missed 2?
No, 100% they did not play 2 because I was I was frothing for 2.
Okay.
And then, because I was begging my parents to let us get out like the second one from the video store, and they're like, no, it'll be on TV. And then it was like, this week on TV, Back to the Future Part 3. And I was like, what the fuck? And then I watched the start of it when it's like, because I was like, I've seen the first one. And then it starts with Marty being like, I'm back from the future. And I was like, what? and then I think the next day we went and got out the second one. But
nice.
So yeah, the first one, it's like one of those things where it's a kids movie, it's a family movie, and it's a sports movie, and it does both of those things quite well, I think, and I can understand why people would be super nostalgic for it, but you know, it's not lighting up those centers in my brain when I watch it. So I watch it and I can appreciate it on those levels, and I did get into it, and you can like, even though it's not necessarily the kind of movie I would, you know, just discover on my own. It's, you know, you watch it because you hear so much about it. And then I think the first one I did actually like have a good time with. I'll say that.
Yeah.
And then the second and third feel like they get like the first one's definitely the best, and then it goes like 1, 2, 3 if you're ranking them. But then at the same time, it doesn't feel like the quality shifts that much between them. I thought.
I agree.
It's like the first one's clearly the best, but then it's like, it's not like the second one's worse than it.
Yeah, I agree. And critics agree with you as well, Richard. What do you think these movies have on Rotten Tomatoes?
Now, I know that these have famously low scores.
You do? Okay, you do know that. Interesting.
Yeah, because this is
my big reveal of the episode.
Because this is like a classic. What's a movie you love that is terrible on that is below fresh on Rotten Tomatoes? People go The Mighty Ducks. And do you want to reveal how much it has?
Well, the second two are both 20%.
Yeah.
The first one's 23%.
That's insane. That is unfair. Like
that's a crazy low score for The Mighty Ducks. Perfectly adequate movie.
Yeah, like that's the thing. What's wrong with this movie that 80% of people don't like it?
I looked over, I sort of skimmed a few of the contemporary reviews, and a lot of critics were like, oh, it's dull and uninspired and it's tropey, which is very interesting because I was under the impression that this film was responsible for a lot of like 90s sports movie tropes. But yeah. I guess they weren't. But with that being said, it might make more sense then that watching the first film, and I messaged you about this, I was like, this film really like feels like it's trailblazing certain tropes, but then it'll fuck them up and do something that doesn't complete the trope. And like, so maybe I should have seen it coming. Huh?
Do you want to give an example?
I am going to give examples. Yeah. So it does the whole one of the big tropes that this movie does is the classic rom-com, typically used in rom-coms, is used in Shakespeare's Othello as well. Is the characters hear the main character say something which sounds bad out of context, or like the loving wife walks in on the husband just as like the seductress is kissing him, even though he didn't even want to kiss her, and she's like, "How dare you!" and runs away before he can calmly explain. This I was actually just assaulted. You know what I mean? Like it's that thing where it's like if you took 5 seconds, not only would you be able to explain what happened, but you would negate any ill will towards you by just explaining what happened. But they never do these things, and it's very frustrating. This would be bad in any story, but in The Mighty Ducks, it's just so weird because what happens is he's yelling at his old coach, the coach of the Hawks, and he goes, he's like, oh, they've just had like a row out on the out on the ice, and he's yelling at his old coach, and his coach says something about winning, and Gordon Bombay's like, "Oh yeah, because that's all it's about, isn't it? Winning, 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 and if you can't win, you're not good at anything." He says something like that, right?
Yeah.
And one of the ducks hears him, and because of that, is like, "Right, I'm done with you," and he turns the whole team against him, really briefly, but like he's literally just being sarcastic. It's not a case of like he misunderstood the meaning, or he saw something that looked like what it wasn't.
Yeah.
He just wasn't able to pick up on sarcasm, which is so stupid. And then it's like halfway through, like, or like maybe 10 minutes later, he shows up to try and like win back their good graces, and he's like, "I was being sarcastic," and they're like, "Oh, okay." It's like, what is this? What waste of screen time is this? I was thinking that a really good example of this trope actually done well, I reckon, is in Shrek, with Princess and Ugly don't go together, which Shrek hears Fiona saying to Donkey, but she's talking about herself. And it sounds bad out of context, but because it also involves revealing the secret that Fiona is an ogre, Donkey can't actually tell Shrek the truth.
Yeah,
so it's actually quite it's a justified one, in my opinion.
The worst examples of that are in the show Broadchurch. I found this so frustrating. Like, first season I fucking love. Second season and third season are like, everyone has a secret. You find out part of it. And it's like, you know, they'll hint at liking murdering people or something, and someone goes, that makes you a suspect. They go, "Oh, I can't reveal the truth." And it's like, someone fucking died, and people think it was you because you're not careful with your words. And then they go, "Oh, no, I was actually just cheating on my wife, and I love murdering that pussy."
Yeah. Something that I don't actually have to tell my wife. I can just tell the detective.
Yeah, exactly. I just like, they're not under obligation to like fucking tell your wife. Just, oh my God, someone died. This is more important.
Another weirdly handled trope is about halfway through the first Mighty Ducks film, where Bombay discovers that the region lines of the Pee Wee hockey leagues have been redrawn, which means that the Hawks, the evil team, with the evil coach, their like best player, who's a kid named Banks, they call him Banksy. He should technically be a duck because of the regions being redrawn.
Yeah.
And Bombay goes hard to like get Banks on their team as a duck. Yeah. And to me, this felt like this should be something that happens to the protagonists. Like, their best player is trying to be stolen by the opposing team.
That's interesting. Yeah.
It just real like. It's weird to watch the character who you're supposed to think of as the good guy be like, well, technically, and holds up the map, like being real snivelly and shitty, and like you're talking about the logistics. So I feel like that should have either happened to the Ducks, like their best player is taken by the Hawks, or it should be the entire plot of its own movie or sequel with a fish out of water character who has to join a different hockey team. You know, like it was so weird that it's like, this is the clincher. This is how they win the game, is they steal another... Like, because it's not just like he plays hockey for the team. He's friends with the other team. Like, he's been playing with them for years. It's sad. I would quit hockey if I was a kid and that happened to me. I'd be so upset.
Yeah, well, because they say he either has to be a duck or he can't play, kind of thing.
Yeah. Which is a conflict that feels like it should happen to the good guys and not the bad guys.
Yeah, and then they'll work out some way around it. Because what do they work... How does that resolve again? They like...
He just joins the team and he's real good and they win because of him.
Yeah.
They try to contrive like struggle out of the fact that no one likes him on the Ducks, but it still is kind of like, I don't know. I wouldn't like someone if they did that. If they tried to steal a team member just based off logistical, you know. I thought that a similar thing happens in D3, where they manage to stay at the high-class high school they're at, because Bombay turns up and threatens to sue the high school for expiring their scholarships. Like, I wrote down, Richard, it's not very cash money to save the day by threatening to sue the bad guys.
It isn't very cash money.
It's not cool. It's not a cool way to do it. the bad guys can threaten to kick the kids out, but by doing what is it's kind of like a boringly realistic reaction to that of like you're gonna sue them. It's like you should never write a movie where the main character gets over their character flaw by going to see a counselor, even though that's probably what they should do in real life. It's like narrative cheating to be like, and they go see a counselor and their character flaw is solved.
Because it's like, oh no, they're having legal troubles. They just called their lawyer and he sorted it out.
And Bombay hasn't even been a practicing lawyer for 2 movie lengths at this point.
Yeah, shouldn't he be disbarred? I mean, that's 3 hours, 20 minutes he hasn't been a 2 whole movie lengths. But yeah, like, surely, because he was suspended from the firm. I mean, I guess he's not disbarred. No. So maybe, but...
And he doesn't actually sue them. He just threatens to sue them. So maybe.
Yeah, so it could just be that he's putting on a show to look like a big man in front of his team.
Another weirdly handled trope in D3, is that the varsity warriors prank the Ducks by inviting them out to dinner, and then they leave. And just as you think, like, it's going to be revealed that the Warriors spiked the Ducks' food with laxatives, or there's a food fight about to break up, it turns out they just ran away and left them with the check.
Yeah, for $847. I thought they were going to pull the Van Wilder dog come in the food.
Right, it was something like that. The film is setting itself up for something filmic. Being left with the check is not a very visually exciting
and then they just seem to just work for the thing.
They work for the restaurant for a bit. And like it seems like if we're going realistic, and the realistic version of this prank is leaving someone with the check, it feels like you could also very easily just explain that to the people at the restaurant, and they'll chase up the more older and responsible students who did this, and wouldn't the teacher or the coach just be like responsible for this? Yeah, I don't know. The whole franchise is full of these moments where it lulls you into a false sense of security that you're about to see like a stereotypical story trope play out. And then to its credit, it does something different. But the thing it does different is boring. It does a boring thing instead of a interesting and different thing. And I think that's probably my biggest criticism of the series as a whole, I think. Yeah. I also thought that the new coach in D3 is such an arsehole. Orion. And I feel like the film wants you to be like, oh, wow, it turns out this harsh coaching technique had a point, and we all learned something. Yeah. But you just find out that his daughter was paralyzed in a car accident. But it's not like him putting all the players on in different positions had a dramatic effect. They're not, Charlie doesn't find out he's better at defense than scoring. Yeah, well, because the game finishes when Goldberg, the husky kid, who's normally their goalkeeper, has a chance an open goal to shoot the goal, the winning goal in the dying seconds of the game. And it's like, any other player could have done that and they wouldn't have hesitated for so long. Yeah, exactly. They probably wouldn't have been 0-0 till the last second if they'd been in their normal positions. If they'd been in the normal positions that they've been practicing in since 1992. Yeah. So the first film was produced by Orion, the company, which is bankrupt now, and a fun memory I have of that, and I might have mentioned this on the podcast before, is have you ever seen UHF, the Weird Al Yankovic movie? I've seen the music video. Okay, well, I used to have the movie on DVD, and I watched the DVD commentary of it, where Weird Al does a commentary of the film, and it opens with the Orion logo and the music, and as it happens, the first thing you hear Weird Al do in this whole commentary is go, Orion is bankrupt now. And so now whenever I see Orion, I think of that line. And the coach being named Orion was a wonderful reminder of that, as well as the first film actually being an Orion film. Yeah. What do you think? I haven't seen that, but it sounds very funny. It is very funny. I don't have any particular memories with what's Orion's logo. It looks like it's like real metallic and it's floating in space. Oh. Let me have a look. Oh yeah, another one. Yeah. I thought, Richard, controversial Mighty Ducks take. I thought D2 had the most interesting hockey scenes. As someone who was...
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah. Like someone who was snoring through, not literally snoring, of course, but like really like trying to make.
I wasn't asleep. I was just snoring.
These hockey scenes. D2 seems to embrace the whole hockey game turned fist fight chaos, which I think is probably the most interesting thing about hockey. Like, there's not really any fisticuffs happening in the first Mighty Ducks film, but they really embrace that in the second one.
Yeah.
Which should be the most exciting thing about about hockey. Yeah. But, Richard, yes. I'm not the only one who... that's maybe not the most popular opinion, because JJ Watt, who is an NFL player, not an NHL player, but an NFL player, and this was sent to us on Discord by our listener Jensen, who actually suggested the Mighty Ducks as the franchise that we covered.
Thank you, Jensen.
Thank you, Jensen. JJ Watt stated that D2 is his favourite sports movie, but said that the end is lame because, and this is a quote, the shootout against Iceland in the Junior Goodwill Games final where Gunnar Stahl does a triple deck, which doesn't even count as a triple deck because he stopped and took a slap shot at the end. He takes a slap shot and the camera cuts to Julie Gaffney's glove, which is closed. You never see the puck go into the glove, like they would have known if the puck hit the back of the net or not. I loved the movie overall, but that one scene, even as a kid, I was like, that was poorly made. They didn't think that all the way through.
Yeah, it is. Yes. So what happens is, like the bad guy shoots for goal. There's a different goalkeeper, and he shoots. You see the puck flying, and then it cuts, and she's got a closed glove. Now, had she not caught the puck, because this moment is played for suspense. You know, it's a good couple of seconds before she opens the glove and drops the puck.
Did she miss it? Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like, you would see it go into the net, and everyone would be cheering because
there's
the game's
also a
over.
Siren that goes off whenever.
Yeah, exactly. So like, there's no real suspense, and also like, just even from movie making tropes, you can tell what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny reading someone nitpick sport the way I would nitpick a movie.
Yeah.
Reading this, I'm like, what the hell are you talking about, JJ?
Yeah,
Watt?
It's not a triple deck.
Okay. I would also like to put forward to JJ Watt, though, that the whole ending is bogus, because the whole penalty shot thing, what a boring way to... There's too many people. Everyone gets a chance. It just goes back and forth between the two different teams, each getting a penalty shot per member, which my flatmate told me is so that you can't just get your best player to do it. You have to get like an average score of the whole team.
That's interesting, because I think that's the way you end it.
Really? I thought it was boring. I thought they did it with too many characters.
All right.
We're going to fight about it?
Yep.
What was your favourite part of D2, D3, or you know what? Fuck it, D1.
D. My favourite part was, I loved the guy's triple deck at the end, and then
actually, it's not a triple deck.
Wow. I did think.
Do you know
funny,
why?
though.
Because he stopped and took a slap shot.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty obvious. So,
I didn't need JJ Watt to point
it's funny
out.
though, watching the second one, it's clear that the first one was a big success, because it does feel like a bigger sequel, and you get like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the basketballer, is in it, and he like has drinks with Bombay, and then also Wayne Gretzky shows up, who's probably the most famous ice hockey player and maybe the best athlete of all time.
Really?
Yeah. He's like famous for being like, he excels so much at his own. Maybe him and like Usain Bolt in terms of like being so much better than everyone else at your sport.
Right.
There's all these crazy stats about Wayne Gretzky. Like it's like if you take away all of his goals, he's still the highest point scorer in all of the NHL because of all the points he got from assists. Because it's like, that counts as a point for you and shit like that.
Wow.
And the Gretzky brothers are the highest scoring brothers of all time, and his brother got like 4 points.
Who are the Gretzky brothers?
Well, it's just I don't know.
Who's his brother?
I don't know what his brother's name is.
What are you, Wayne and Dwayne?
But yeah, so it's like, yeah, he's actually like genuinely considered one of the greatest sports people of all time.
Genuinely and generally considered that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, did you know, Richard, moving on from that cool, fun fact, D3 nearly featured anti-Semitic Bulgarians as the villains.
Like, is the anti-Semitism part of their villainy, or is this like the characters, they were removed from the script for being anti-Semitic unintentionally?
I don't know. I think it's the first one, that the Bulgarian characters were anti-Semitic, which feels like maybe too heavy for something in the Mighty Ducks, but they do kind of, cautiously approach discussions around like problematic Native American depictions and football logos and stuff in this film.
Yeah, because there's the chick that Charlie wants to bone in the third one.
Wants to duck.
They meet when she's getting a petition signed to change the name of the Warriors, because it's and then he goes, hey, we've got the Redskins, and it's like, just because a bunch of things are racist, it doesn't mean that they're all okay. Like,
yeah. Now that I think about the fact that that's never resolved, it almost feels like it's the movie's writers saying that to you and not.
Yeah, like you're supposed to think, yeah, you dumb bitch.
Speaking of the movie's writers, Stephen Brill, I think his name is, who apparently like he wrote the first one, wanted to play Bombay, but he was like nowhere near famous enough, and ended up like
so they got Emilio Estevez.
He ended up like suing for royalties or something from the first film. But the second film this was our post on Instagram. When the opening credits are happening in the second film, on one screen it says written by Stephen Brill, based on the characters created by Stephen Brill.
Yeah.
And I feel like, Richard, they don't need to be on this. If you're going to mention them both in the credits, they don't need to be on the same screen as each other.
Yeah, and they don't need to take up... I mean, normally the based on characters by would just be in the end credits, but this Brill guy, as brilliant as a writer as he is, he's also got a brilliant ego.
Yes, he does. So, do you want to know why Bombay wasn't in D3?
So, I was thinking about this. Now, this must have been around about the same time as The War at Home, right? Which Emilio Estevez starred in.
Yeah, he was busy filming The War. Do we want to just say what happens, or do you want to just maintain that? Our recording fucked up and we lost about 6 minutes, so you're hearing a second take at information already said. So that's a fun thing. So Bombay was filming... Emilio Estevez was filming The War at Home and wasn't able to devote much time to D3, which is why he's barely in it. And he agreed to be in it for free in exchange for Disney helping fund The War at Home. Do you think these movies needed Emilio Estevez, or benefit from not having him in it much?
I know. What did I say earlier about it? So whatever I said, I didn't mean it, because I think... no, it was earlier in the week, sorry. I told you that I thought Emilio Estevez was bad in these movies. And I do. I think he's very dead behind the eyes, and I think he's a very odd screen presence to watch. It works when he's in like the Brat Pack and he's like a teenager who can't, who's too shy to emote or whatever. But you know, when you're coaching a little league NHL team, you gotta give me something, Estevez. And I think the movie just, I don't know, it suffered a bit from switching protagonists in the third film, because like you said earlier, you know, Charlie's not he's prominent in the first one, not in the second, just any old character in the second one, and then in the third one it's like he's the main character. I did say that in the now lost recording. I couldn't remember when you said it.
Well, one thing we also discovered in those lost recordings was there is a podcast out there called Quack Attack, which cover the Mighty Ducks franchise. Every episode, not just one, just every episode of their show covers it.
So there's if you go on the Mighty Ducks franchise Wikipedia page, in other media, it says podcast. There's a podcast channel dedicated to the trilogy titled The Quack Attack, has over 100 episodes dedicated to the topic. And so, man, this has got to be one of the most devastating losses in podcasting history. Because boy, did we come up with some good content ripping on fucking... And maybe this is a chance to turn over a new leaf and reach out an olive branch to the Quack Attack rather than all the sort of vitriol we spat at them.
Well, the only vitriol was I suggested that they themselves edited the Wikipedia
which
page.
They 100% did. or whoever Brent from Texas is, they did it.
They have about double our followers on Twitter, so they are, I guess, bigger than us on Twitter. And their website states that they are the definitive Quack, the definitive Mighty Ducks podcast, a title which I would like to challenge their currently. I would like to challenge their currently 225 Mighty Ducks episodes with our one single Mighty Ducks episode as the true definitive Mighty Ducks podcast.
It's about quality, not quantity. Quacks. But so
someone reach out to them and say, "Hey, have you listened to this yet?" Because they call you out. How do you do 225 episodes on a series that is probably going to be one of our shorter ones? Okay, what are the episodes? The latest one's called "The Rise and Fall" and "Rise and Fall and Rise" of the Quack Attack's attempt to rename the Mighty Ducks films. They are stepping on our territory. Oh my gosh! Richard. We're the title podcast. That does sound kind of interesting.
We're the definitive title podcast.
Wow. All right. Well, Quack Attack, if you're listening, reach out to us. Let's do a collab on something. That'll be fun.
Something probably Mighty Ducks related, let's be honest.
Yeah. Do you reckon they'd watch other hockey movies? You'd have to. 225 episodes on 3 movies?
What in a TV show?
Yeah, we'll get to that, actually.
How many ice hockey movies are there?
14.
What other ones are there, then?
The one with Stifler.
Oh, yeah, there's Goon.
Sean William Scott.
Yeah, it's funny. In the first one, they talk about, like, oh, he's an enforcer. He's just a goon. And it's like, there's that movie Goon, The Last of the Enforcers.
I haven't seen it.
Neither have I.
Shall we move on from ripping out the Quack Attack for the second time today to randomly placed useless statistics?
Let's.
3 of which, in fact, all of these useless statistics you already know. So do your best to act surprised. And Richard, did you know that this is our second franchise where a main character is used heavily to promote the third film but is barely in the actual thing after Spy Kids? Because Carmen is barely in Spy Kids 3D Game Over, and Bombay is barely in D3.
Interesting. Yeah. I forgot about Carmen. When you told me that the first time, I was thinking of the parents because, like, Antonio Banderas and the mum don't appear until like an hour and 15 minutes into an hour and 20-minute film. Yeah. Also, this is our second 90s family comedy franchise where at least one film features one of the Sheffield children from The Nanny, after Beethoven, which features Nicole Tom as Rice Newton. Rice being a real name. She played Maggie on The Nanny. D3, The Mighty Ducks, features Benjamin Salisbury, a.k.a. Brighton Sheffield, who plays a student hockey commentator named Josh in the film. And now, have you looked up what films, like, the third Nanny child is in?
No.
Because what ones have we done? Sorry, we've done Maggie.
We've done Maggie and Brighton. We've got Gracie left.
Gracie, Madeline Zima. What else is she in?
I feel like she's in stuff, though. I feel like she's still a working actress.
No, she's in a Cinderella story.
Bro, we've completed the trilogy of I can't even get the words out. We have watched franchises which have starred all of the Sheffield children.
Wow.
What an accomplishment. I feel proud of myself and you. Wow, so this is actually our third.
This is the one that completes it.
Wow. I didn't even think to look. That's bad, useless statisticking.
That is.
Statisticals. Okay, well, this is also our second franchise. Maybe it's fucking not. Maybe it's our 100th franchise. After Spider-Man, which nearly starred Jake Gyllenhaal. He nearly played Charlie, who, as I told you before, and then you told me again, but it sounded like the first time to the listeners, he played the main kid character in the first film, who's downgraded to just another character in D2, and then is blasted up to lead protagonist in D3. Gyllenhaal was cast as the character, but his parents didn't let him do it in the end because they wanted him to focus on his schoolwork. He said, there's a quote from Jake Gyllenhaal, "My parents were like, you're about to enter junior high school, you've got to get your education. That's the most important thing. I promise you, you'll hate us now, but you'll thank us later," and I do.
Did you know that Jake Gyllenhaal actually almost starred in Moulin Rouge? He was turned down ultimately because he looked too young to star opposite Nicole Kidman, and he also auditioned for Frodo in Lord of the Rings.
I don't think they.
Yeah, they're not like almost starring. Yeah.
Richard, we talk about titles a lot on this podcast, and this is almost one that like feels like it's trying to bait me into talking about, to the point where I don't want to, just to show it that I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Now look, these are the titles for the films: The Mighty Ducks, D2 The Mighty Ducks, D3 The Mighty Ducks. What is interesting is that there are a few sequels I can think of off the top of my head where the second one is like the first letter and then two. But I don't remember one doing it again, like twice.
Right,
like doing D2 and D3.
Yeah, there's T2 Terminator, T2 Trainspotting.
Yeah, but the Terminator 3 isn't called T3 Terminator.
Yeah.
Or X2, X-Men United. The third one's not called X3.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of interesting. And look, I don't like it. I'll say that. I first of all, the fact that the series is MD and not D feels weird, that you're choosing D to be the...
Yeah, it's also like, it's kind of arrogant of the films to be like, we're the only film that you associate with this letter of the alphabet.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't like it, but at least it's consistent.
Yeah.
At least it's not The Mighty Ducks D2, The Mighty Ducks 3.
Yeah.
That would drive me crazy.
Yeah.
So that's all I have to say about your dumb titles, Stephen Brill. What do you think about that?
Yeah, you wouldn't want to waste a whole podcast retitling the films, would you?
Well, someone did. Someone out there did. Richard, speaking of things that start with D, let's get into some dumb IMDb trivia.
Yeah.
Because, as we all know, IMDb trivia is user-submitted, meaning that some of it's real stupid, but that's not the only reason we read it out. Sometimes it's just really interesting or funny, but makes me feel dumb, which is in the case of our first piece of dumb IMDb trivia for this episode. This is from D2, The Mighty Ducks. Joss Ackland was apparently unavailable to reprise his role as Hans, and his position in the film was replaced with Jean Rubes as Jean, Hans' brother. Hans' non-appearance in the film was explained as him going back to Norway to visit his mother. Did you realise that it wasn't Hans in the second film?
I don't remember there being a character named Hans in these films.
So the Bombay has like a mentor who is this old German man, and I thought he was in all three of them, and he actually dies in the third film. But in the second film, it's not him; it's his brother.
That's so funny.
I didn't know that till I read this piece of trivia. In the trivia section for D3, the next, pretty much the rest of these are from D3. In one scene, Charlie says he is allergic to nuts. This is a reference to Joshua Jackson's real-life allergy to nuts.
That's nuts.
Is that a reference to that? I guess I can't choose what someone else is referencing.
Yeah, you fucking dick.
But it feels like the character is also allergic to nuts.
Maybe.
In later interviews, Joshua Jackson, the same guy who's allergic to nuts, admitted to having little to no interest in doing another Mighty Ducks movie and that he was ready to move on to more adult roles. He said he used a lot of that attitude in his portrayal of Charlie Conway in the film, as the script calls for Charlie to be more rebellious and moody, so he channeled his feelings at the time of doing another Mighty Ducks movie into the role. That is a crazy thing to just say that you're doing, like shit on the film like that. When Coach Orion posts the position, so after they've had their first hockey game together with the new coach, he posts what their new positions are. Russ makes a comment about being placed on third line, regarding it as being a major diss, in parentheses, insult. He isn't wrong in saying this, since at this point the Ducks only have 12 players, 2 of which being goalies, and Russ being one of the 2 remaining defensemen on the team, the other being Fulton. That's the whole piece of trivia.
I could not follow that.
Yeah, it changes what it's saying halfway through. It's basically saying a character is annoyed that the positions don't reflect their skills.
What?
That's the piece of trivia.
But is it saying that, like, the third... I mean, this might be like a hockey thing that we don't understand. Is, like, third line perhaps a position that you don't need because of the makeup of the Mighty Ducks? Because it mentions only having 12 players. And so maybe it's like, when you have 13 or 15 or however many, you have a third line, but they don't,
Wouldn't that just be like they're just explaining a joke then?
I don't know.
I read it as
I
just
needed that. If that's the joke, I
upset.
needed it explained.
Yeah, that's true. Charlie says they have 100 fire ants, but the jar clearly has way more.
Yeah, I mean, it's believable that he's just, eyeballing it.
No, it's a piece of trivia. The only film in the trilogy, D3, is where...
The only film of the trilogy.
It's the only film in the trilogy where Jesse Hall doesn't call Adam Banks a cake eater, since Hall does not appear in the film. Instead, Russ Tyler refers to Banks as a cake eater.
Okay.
So it's still called a cake eater.
Yeah.
The trivia could be Adam Banks is called a cake eater in every film.
Yeah.
This is the only Mighty Ducks film also where Adam Banks isn't injured in any way. Maybe it's because Jesse Hall isn't there to call him a cake eater. In D2, The Mighty Ducks, Han's brother, Jean, the character I didn't know existed, mentions that Charlie's mother, Casey, got remarried between the first 2 films. There is absolutely no mention of her still being married in D3. If you pay close attention, you'll easily notice that she is not wearing a wedding ring at any point in the movie, and so it is implied that she is divorced again. And look... there is some weird, juicy gossip that happens off-screen in between sequels, because Gordon Bombay and Charlie's mum, they get together in the first film, and they get together, like, with Charlie's blessing. Like, he tells Bombay, I just want my mum to have someone who's not going to run away.
Yeah.
Something happens between the first and second film where not only is she not in it, but Bombay has like 2 separate love interests going on in it with their like tutor and with the Icelandic teams. Well, I don't know what her role on the maybe she's the other tutor. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe it's a thing for tutors. But then she's back in the third one. She's back in the third one and seems okay with Bombay, and Charlie seems okay with Bombay, despite the fact that he literally is not with the mum anymore, which is like the one thing he said he wanted for his mum. And it kind of suggests in the third film that they still like each other, like very subtly, but like enough for it to be like, what the fuck? What? This is more interesting than the Mighty Ducks stories. I want to hear the juicy love story between Bombay and Charlie's mum. I want to see it. Richard.
Yes.
It's time for Continue the Franchise, one of our final segments of the show.
Oh boy, here we go.
So the Mighty Ducks franchise has been expanded in a few interesting ways already, including an actual NHL hockey team called the Anaheim Ducks. They were once called the Anaheim Mighty Ducks and were named after the movie and were owned by Disney for a bit.
And also,
no Disney.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it's mentioned in the third film that
Yeah.
that there's a real team that was named after them, and it's like
Presumably because they got so big from their world famous Pee Wee hockey stint in D2,
yeah.
right?
I was coming up with continue the franchises that referenced the real team or something like that, but then it's so universe breaking that that team actually exists within the fucking movies.
Yeah, he tells it to Linda, Charlie tells it to Linda, who's the girl he's trying to impress in D3. I thought he was just referring to the plot of D2. I thought because they were like an internationally renowned team in D2, that's who, when he says the Anaheim Ducks, they named a professional team after us.
Right,
I thought he was talking about the previous iteration of the team from
Nice.
D2.
Yeah.
And one of probably our most strangest and kind of intriguing expanded media as well, there is of course a Mighty Ducks animated series which is very loosely inspired by the films despite sharing the title and the logo. On the Wikipedia page for the cartoon it states, unlike the film and the hockey team, the show was about a team of anthropomorphic hockey playing ducks. I like that it specifies unlike the hockey team as well. The hockey team is also not about anthropomorphic hockey playing ducks. The cartoon specifically follows... How much do you know about the cartoon? Because this will blow your mind if you don't know anything.
It's like it's like aliens, right?
Yeah, so the cartoon specifically follows alien ducks from the planet Puckworld who play hockey on Earth and battle the villainous Lord Dragonus, leader of the dastardly reptilian alien race known as the Saurians. This is the Mighty Ducks TV show. It sounds like a parody of like you're watching some movie where they're coming up with a 90s cartoon, and this is what they come up with. The show ran for 26 episodes through 1996 and 1997, and the first 3 episodes were re-edited into a single feature film called Mighty Ducks the Movie, The First Face-Off, which would have been fucking bananas to include in this podcast episode. As we're doing the Mighty Ducks trilogy and Mighty Ducks the Movie, The First Face-Off. But I thought maybe we could watch it for film franchise follow-ups at some point.
Yeah.
Could be cool. And I presume as well, this is more fodder for Quack Attack to discuss.
Yeah.
As the Mighty Ducks animated series.
I think it's on Disney Plus, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So all 3 of these movies are, if you want to watch along at home.
Yeah, true. Actually, only the first half of Mighty Ducks the animated series is on Disney Plus. But speaking of Disney Plus, there is also an upcoming show based on the franchise. The plot is said to revolve around a 13-year-old boy who gets kicked off the junior division of the Mighty Ducks hockey team. In February 2020, it was announced that Emilio Estevez would reprise his role as Coach Gordon Bombay in the series. So this is getting brought back in quite a significant way, right? And in as much of a significant way as it could be brought back, because they're getting the main star
this
back.
I believe they were supposed to start shooting this on like Monday a week ago, but because of coronavirus, obviously it got shut down. But because there was someone posted, it was like a director being like, "Today's supposed to be my first day directing this a TV show that I based on a movie series I grew up loving."
Wow. That's nuts, man.
Yeah.
But I was going to say it's a coincidence that we got it, but I guess it was given to us, so it's less of a coincidence when it's someone intentionally gave it to us. What is your continue the franchise, dude? Pitch me your sequel to the Mighty Ducks.
Okay, so I kept on just trying to think of like titles and then trying to come up with like things that come around there, because I was like, it's just called The Ducks. They're no longer mighty.
Yeah.
It's like everyone's down and they're like, look at half of these actors in real life and you'll see how some of them have fallen on really hard times. And then so it's like, it's a rounding up the troops back together for whatever reason. And then maybe either that or you have the mightiest duck. And it's just like Charlie is now actually playing for the NHL and like he's playing for the Anaheim Ducks. And then something happens.
That'd be a step down because they named it after the Pee Wee team.
And it's called the Mightiest Duck. And then that's kind of all I got. I was gonna do something with like a weird meta thing where like it's about the real team, but they're made up with like some of the members of the original film. So does it take place in our world or that world or whatever? But then the fact that the Anaheim Ducks exist within that universe stopped those ideas in their tracks. And then obviously as well, again, the let's see what they're up to now, do a reunion. It's like they're kind of doing that for Disney Plus anyway. So, and even what if they were actually ducks? Like,
yeah. Well, that's the thing, is that I found this very hard. This is one of the hardest I've ever had to try to come up with a sequel idea, mainly because I really don't care about hockey and didn't really want to see the further adventures of hockey.
Yeah.
But this is why my idea is so bad. Which is, my Continue the Franchise is a feud between rival porn companies, one who wants to make the Mighty Dicks and one who wants to make the Mighty Fucks.
Nice.
And they're like, no, I have the rights to this. And I was like, no, I want to make it. And maybe in the end, they make the Mighty Dick Fucks.
The Mighty Cucks.
Hey, that's good.
Yeah. Another one that this might actually exist, or it might just be a fan trailer, but there's ESPN does a series of documentaries called 30 for 30, and it's like these 30-minute, like, really, really good sports documentaries. And so I think for April Fool's one year, they did one for the events of Rocky IV. And so it's like all these like professional athletes talking about the fictional events of Rocky IV. And so to do that for like, you know, have all these, like Wayne Gretzky talk about how like inspired he was when he saw this fucking Pee-wee team win.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. And so that's one of those things like, this could exist easily.
You could do one for Air Bud as well.
Yeah.
All right, Richard, moving on to Rank Dat Franchise, where we rank this franchise with the other, according to Letterboxd, 106 other franchises, even though this is our 102nd, depending on how you count it. I added the Mighty Ducks to the list and sort of just put it up the top so I wouldn't lose where it was. And man, it looks funny just seeing the Mighty Ducks in first place in front of Toy Story, Back to the Future, Mission Impossible, and Scream. Where do we think the Mighty Ducks as a franchise sits in our canon?
Okay. What? I mean, is it good or bad? First question we got to ask ourselves.
It's in the middle for me. I don't think the only like kind of big sin this movie commits is Emilio Estevez skiving out of the third film, right? Like that's the only real like legitimate flaw. The rest of it is relatively consistent. It's not something I particularly enjoy in watching, but I wouldn't say it's as bad as something like what's an example? Like the Santa Claus. I feel like it's better than the Santa Claus because the Santa Claus has like real dumb shit in it.
Yeah, I would put it around the same kind of level as like the Expendables.
Do you reckon? I reckon Spy Kids is better than the Mighty Ducks. The Spy Kids is after Expendables.
Yeah, but then Spy Kids has Spy Kids 4.
I don't think 3 and 4 actually are both pretty bad. I would still rather watch Spy Kids more than the Mighty Ducks.
Okay, yeah.
So it's worse than Spy Kids? Is it worse than High School Musical?
Yeah.
Is it worse than Nymphomaniac? We're right on the...
No.
We're right at the we don't start from the start. We start from the Nymphomaniac constant as the...
I reckon it goes between High School Musical and Nymphomaniac.
Okay, a lot of stuff is falling in that area.
Yeah, well, a lot of stuff, by definition, is average.
That's true. That is true. All right, so it is currently 43 out of 106 franchises on our Letterboxd, letterboxd.com/cultpopture/list/fff-ranking/edit/ oh no, you can't edit. Yeah. Okay, well, Richard, now we're moving on to our final segment of the episode, and that is Franchise Roulette, where we get a random number generator to randomly generate a number which will correspond to a list of franchises which will tell us what our next franchise is that we're going to cover next fortnight. Richard, how many franchises do we have listed on the list at the moment?
We have 179.
And I was thinking the other day, sometimes we forget to delete old ones, and they stay on there, but I guess that doesn't really affect the randomness of which franchise we later get, right? Before we give us the number, and then I'll do like a episode wrap up so that people stay for the plugs so they can hear the next episode reveal.
All right. Do you want the number actually?
Give me the number, then you find it, then I'll do the plugs, then you tell us what the movie is.
Okay.
the franchises.
Whoops, sorry, I need to put my speaker on.
126.
126. Well, before you tell us what that is, Richard, please be sure to check out Cult Popture on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and Twitter. We're all over the place. You can hit us up at all of those places. You can find the podcast wherever you're listening to the podcast, either at the Cult Popture Podcast YouTube channel or on all the other places like Acast and Apple Podcasts and Stitcher and places you get it. You can also email us at cultpopturemedia@gmail.com, support us at patreon.com/cultpopture, and join the Cult Popture Discord where you can literally just chat to us every day, and we are not famous enough to even consider not replying to you out of some kind of sense of self-righteousness.
Yeah, sorry we're not getting Quack Attack numbers.
Yeah. So, Richard, what is the next franchise we're covering?
It's a trilogy again.
A trilogy of trilogies.
Yeah, and so this one, for our 100th episode of Film Franchise Fortnights as well. We've covered, because of the way we do franchises, the numbers of the amount of franchises we've covered doesn't match up exactly with the episodes we've done, but this will be the 100th episode of Film Franchise Fortnights. So it's a trilogy. Most recent one came out last year. Any guesses?
Yep. Is it John Wick?
No. It stars Gerard Butler.
It stars Gerard. Oh shit, dude. Are we doing How to Train Your Dragon?
No.
Are we not?
No, we're doing the other trilogy that finished last year, which stars Gerard Butler. It's live action. It started in 2013, 2016, 2019. Olympus Has Fallen, London Has Fallen, and Angel Has Fallen.
Damn, dude. Do you know how much more I'd prefer to do How to Train Your Dragon than that? And How to Train Your Dragon feels like it's one of our watershed episodes, you know? We would get so much fan play for How to Train Your Dragon. People would love if we did that, and I would have just excited so many of our listeners by thinking it was that, because that still qualifies for the description, to the point where I thought you were kidding when you said no, it's not that. And then you started saying no, it's live action, and I was like, oh my god, you're not kidding.
Wow.
Okay, so the Has Fallen, what is that trilogy called?
If you got the Wikipedia page for it, is Fallen film series.
The Fallen trilogy. I feel like there's going to be more. God, these films are going to be fucking dumb. We keep doing watered down version of James Bond, post James Bond.
Yeah.
There's a spectrum, and on that spectrum, whatever that spectrum is for, James Bond is on that spectrum, and so is the Expendables, and so is the Fallen trilogy. I don't think the Mighty Ducks trilogy is. Well,
sweet.
Cool. Yeah, hang out for that series next fortnight, guys. And thank you for listening to this episode, and we'll see you next time. Be sure to stay tuned for the post-credits sequence, which will play just after this music stops. Thank you.
And
bye.
Thanks so much for listening.
Hey,
I'm
come
Richard
on.
Barnett. Good night.
All right, come on. Sweet. Welcome, everybody, to the post-credits scene. Richard.
I know, we're here already. It feels like we just started the podcast, but you know, so those good episodes like that, they just breeze right past us, don't they?
But that's why we've got this little treat at the end, this post-credits scene. This segment, of course, brought to you by our patrons who pay more than $5, who donate more than $5 a month, or $5 or more, over at patreon.com/cultpopture, and you too can get in on this if you join our Patreon. Once again, that's patreon.com/cultpopture. This is the dessert after the meal, you know?
Ooh.
Yeah. And
it's spicy.
Today's post-credit sequence was brought to you by Ed Amon, who says, in your opinion, what has been the best decade of filmmaking for cinema in terms of producing the best creative work and classics to become mainstay and cultural icons? Some might argue that the 70s and the 90s. What do you guys think? It's very subjective, so go to town, but you have to choose one. Oh,
Jesus. I mean, yeah, obviously the longer they go on. I mean, if you talk about innovation, it's like, you know, the 40s and 50s, like changed what cinema was essentially.
Yeah.
But I almost think he says some might argue the 70s and the 90s, but in terms of like especially becoming cultural icons, I might say the 80s. Just if you were to survey 1 million people and say name 10 classic movie characters, the list you would end up with would be mostly 80s characters.
What's an
I
example?
would say.
Marty McFly?
Yeah, Marty McFly.
That's what.
Actually, I'm going to Google classic movie just movie characters.
While you do that, I will flip the bloody question on its head, dude. And I'm going to ask a different question, which is, what is definitively the worst decade for filmmaking? And that's the motherfucking 2000s. Inarguably, the 2000s, 2000 to especially the early 2000s. So maybe by 2010, you obviously get a few more classics. And I'm of course not saying that no good movies came out in the 2000s, because a lot of my favorite movies did. But if you look at the early 2000s, and we've talked about this before, you've got your only bad Mission Impossible film. You've got everyone trying to be the Matrix, and maybe it's because of the Matrix that it bombed so hard as the early parts of a decade. But even like we've talked about this when we've done our long-running horror franchises, is that, and I feel like we've talked about this at least twice on the podcast before, but the reason that people that are our age, Richard, kind of regard horror as a bit of a dud genre is because we spent most of our lives in the 2000s, and when you look at the 2000s, horror was terrible for the entire time. You know what I mean? Like horror sucked in the 2000s. So, and it wasn't until the likes of your Get Outs and your It Follows and your It's Chapter 1s that we really started to see horror as a genre that is worthy of people's attention again, because it was just so bad for like 10 to 15 years.
But yes, in terms of 80s characters, you got like Indiana Jones, the Tim Burton's Batman. I mean, arguably, like the Star Wars characters did most of their work in the 80s. Alan Ripley, John McClane, the Terminator, Freddy Krueger.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's like just like the Hall of Fame of movie characters, I think, would feature predominantly the bloody 80s.
Nice.